Imam Hussein Charity is giving you the chance to provide food baskets for destitute and impoverished families all over Iraq and Afghanistan. Each basket costs around £30, $35 roughly, and can feed a family of 4. The food basket contains essentials such as flour, bread, tomato puree, oil. They get different spices as well, salt, pepper, even like cinnamon. You get lentils, you get different vegetables, meats, dates, tea, dried lemons, and not forgetting rice. Take advantage of this blessed month and help destitute and impoverished families. You can pay via bank transfer, PayPal, or visit us at www.imamhusseincharity.com.
Give the gift of a healthy meal to a family in need by donating to our Food Basket campaign.
But from me and the team here at Imam Hussein TV, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Now, a lot goes into producing the shows that you love here on Imam Hussein TV. It may be half an hour for you, but it's hours for us. We have many factors to consider when producing our shows. Time, cost, set design, sourcing speakers and guests. It takes us about an hour to film, 3 hours to edit, 2 hours to render, and you watch it in 30 to 40 minutes. Hours just for 30 minutes. What is the I Am Husseini show? Well, it's a show that provides you, the dear viewers, a gateway, a window, a pathway, whatever you want to call it, to visit Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam at the comfort of your own home.
I am a host at the Ahkam SOS. It is a show which entails with people sending in the Ahkam questions which me and Sheikh Ali Maash discuss and give them their answers.
My show is Her Thoughts, which is a show featuring a rotating panel of female presenters discussing a range of topics from a female perspective.
Verses of Love aims to be the post-Majlis Majlis. It tries to bring the community together to continue engaging with the Masa'ib of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam.
I've had the honor of working and directing and producing documentaries for the Imam Hussein TV 3 channel.
So the late night show is essentially it's a talk show. I had guests all the way from self-development experts, media experts, sales directors.
My show, live in London, it needs no introduction, with world-renowned scholar Dr. Ammar Nakshawani.
Sometimes it's difficult for us to do the research. It takes us sometimes a week, 2 weeks to find answers for certain questions. Sometimes the questions don't even get answered and we have to roll them on to next week. But I guess this is a problem that is actually, a good headache and worth having.
One of the main difficulties which we come across is getting female participants to participate on the show. After the show, when we get the emails coming through from the women in our society, in our community, and it really shows us that women relate more to a female speaker.
Among some of the difficulties, I'd say, is the late nights, with a pretty hectic schedule for all the reciters who have probably come from 1 or 2 majalis beforehand. Sometimes you just have this magical moment where the reciter says a line that connects and lets you release all of that emotion, which helps you connect with Abu Abdullah and therefore with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I filmed these documentaries during COVID. That always stays with me because I think that was a difficulty that I thought I will face, yet I think Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi opened so many doors and made everything so easy for me.
How much can we laugh and joke on an Islamic channel, especially when the channel is associated to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But the best part of the show is actually, it's the fun part of it. So that's the games.
The best thing about this show, you can actually speak and discuss and actually voice their opinions and questions to Dr. Ammar Nakshawani.
We've come so far, yet still have so much more to achieve. Support us so that we can support your children in bringing them more knowledge and content, because Imam Hussein TV is your gateway to Karbala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, my dear brothers and sisters. May God have accepted all of your deeds in this, the holy month of Ramadan. And it's great to be back here, continuing our series on Nahjul Balagha. And tonight I wanted to focus on a topic that a lot of people don't necessarily like to talk about, but Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam certainly did. And that was the topic of death. I know this is a holy month in which people want to have some happiness towards the end of the month, but of course, lest we forget that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam died only a couple of nights ago. And I think it would be the most fitting time for us to discuss death. Lectures on death are normally very scary. And lecturers, when we speak about death, we don't really win many plaudits. Because many times as a human being, you prefer that someone speaks to you about the pleasures of this world and the happiness of this world and how much hope there is in this world. And while we do that, there is a need for us to also balance the reality. And the reality is that death will affect each and every one of us. There's nobody who's been able to escape death. Whether you have been the greatest king who has ever existed, whether you have been, for example, the wealthiest person who has ever existed, one way or the other, you're going to go 6 feet under the ground. Now, why is it that part of our mentality as human beings is that we're scared to talk about death? Or we're scared of even thinking about death. You want to think about life. You want to think about how many pleasures there are in this world. You want to think about how long you can live in this world. And the reality is that there's many of us who actually never ever think that we're going to die. Now, what I mean by that is that there are certain people, when you talk with them, they're making plans for the next 55 years. You say to them that, you know what, by the way, there's a good chance that you could pass away any second. But part of our nature is that we don't want to reflect on the reality of death affecting us. We don't mind talking about death affecting other people. We don't mind hearing about death in other situations. But in terms of it affecting us, we prefer not to go towards that discussion. So I don't know if you notice that sometimes if you give lectures about sakarat al-maut, about the pangs of death, if you give lectures about the grave, if you give lectures about the sirat, if you give lectures, for example, about the day of judgment, people get really worried about those types of lectures. People don't want those types of lectures at times because part of us is that we're scared thinking about what could happen when we die. And that's why when you're looking in Nahjul Balagha, what you're seeing with Imam Ali alayhi salam is, of course, that Imam Ali is part of a whole host of famous thinkers and famous philosophers who have tried to elaborate on what is death. How should I approach death? Have you ever seen anyone happy when they talk about death? Or do you ever see anyone looking forward to death? Do you ever come across someone who really looks forward to the day that they die? And they see it, for example, as part of a journey. When you're looking at certain thinkers in history, you see that these thinkers actually look at death in that way. So if you look, for example, at Socrates, Socrates would be the type of person who'd very bluntly say, death is the separation of the soul from the body. And the reality for us is that if truth comes in thinking, which is through the soul, then what's the problem with the soul separating from the body? Because the soul continues to live, you're going to continue to think, and you're going to eventually find all the truth. So for Socrates, what he would do is that he'd look at the human being and say, look, if you admit that you are made up of soul and body, bodies are all going to one day die and decay. You know that your soul continues to live. So just make sure that your soul has prepared enough for itself that when it goes on to its next stage of its journey, it's carrying enough equipment with it. I'll give you an example. Body, for example, now, when the body is about to undertake a journey. You're about to go on holiday after Shahr Ramadan. You've all made your plans for Eid. When you've made your plans for Eid, you'll see that some people have said that we're going to go on this trip for 3 days. Others have said 7 days. Others have said, I want to bring the kids with me. Others have said, make sure that we go on this resort. What you're doing there is because you know your body is going to undertake a journey, what then happens to you is your preparation for your body is going to be intense. Do you prefer to be in first class or in business class or in economy? Ideally, what would you prefer to be on? You want to be on first. You want to sit very comfortably. You might even want to have a bed that you could sleep on a flight. You want to make sure that you also book meals on that particular flight and at the hotel that suit your dietary requirements. Because your body is going on a journey. That journey may be to a resort in Turkey or a resort in Dubai. When you're then booking these holidays, you're making sure that every aspect of your body is going to be looked after. Where you're going to eat, where you're going to enjoy, the beach you're going to go to, the sunlight you're going to take in. When we do that, what we're telling ourselves is that we're undertaking a journey looking after our body. Death is when a person is undertaking a journey where they're ready from now to look after the package and the baggage of their soul. If my soul is going to continue to stay alive and my body is that which is going to die and decay, reality is I've got to find a balance between looking after the journey of my body and the journey of my soul. Hence Imam Ali alayhi salam many times would say, live in this world as if you're going to live in it forever, but plan for the day of judgment as if it's going to come tomorrow. There's no problem a person preparing and looking after their body. But the worst thing is if a person is not thinking about looking after their soul. Therefore, for Socrates looked at death in a very, very interesting way. He said death is the separation of the soul from the body. The body dies, the soul continues. And if you believe that in your search for truth, it's your soul that has the faculty of, for example, the power of reason, al-quwwa al-aqliya, and that this continues to grow. Because in our belief, there is a continuation of growth in the soul from here to the world of barzakh, which some religions may have referred to as, for example, purgatory, whereas we have a different interpretation, but we call it barzakh. The soul continues to grow. What is the growth of the soul? The growth of the body comes, for example, in nourishment, in food, in travel. The growth of the soul is when the realities of the dimensions of our existence become more and more clear to us. Therefore, in Islamic thought, we have basar and basira. Basar, my eyesight. Basira, my insight. There is a difference between eyesight and insight. My eyesight, I'm going to go to an optician and I'm going to tell that optician, listen, I need my eyes to see clearly. My insight is my soul seeing things more and more clear on a journey. One of the first steps on that journey where we had started was where? The pre-eternal realm. Some people call it alam al-dhar, some call it alam al-arwah. Then the soul comes together in, for example, the womb, and then we come into this world. Then we continue from this world to another world of the souls, which is alam al-barzakh. And then eventually we get to the day of judgment. So do you see, if I was to say to you from my explanation, which one is more important that you should have prepared it for a long journey? The body or the soul? Which one would you say? Whether the body precedes the soul or the soul precedes the body. This, of course, is a huge discussion in philosophy as to whether the body is just a carrier for the soul, as to whether the soul and the body, they exist in equal importance. But the reality is that we all have to ask ourselves the question, is my soul at a level that it deserves to be with other souls of a similar ilk on the day of judgment? What do I mean by this? Make sure that your preparation for death involves you looking at your soul and saying that I'm happy with the soul that I have hanging around with 1,000,000 other souls similar to my soul after the day of judgment. When people define heaven and hell, how do they define heaven and hell normally? Heaven, you'll always hear rivers, milk, flowing trees, palaces. Hell, burning, oil, people, fire, skin, changing, torture. I'll define it for you another way. Heaven is when you're around souls who are similar to you. Hell is when you're around souls who are similar to you. You ask yourself, what level has your soul reached now at this moment? Is your soul a soul which is ready to die? Because if you die tomorrow, you're going to be placed with similar souls. If you were to die tomorrow, are you happy to say, knowing your soul. When I say knowing your soul, it's different from knowing your body. Knowing your body is to say, I have this much, for example, this many headaches, I have diabetes, I may have fat, I may have oil, I may have issues, I may have health issues. That's body. Knowing your soul is knowing, I'm an envious person sometimes. I can be very jealous of others. I can be hypocritical. I can be someone who is arrogant. I could be somebody who causes trouble in the community. I don't mind backbiting and destroying people's lives. No problem. If you're at that level, your soul, because these aren't things that Boots can, for example, give me a prescription for. I can't go to Boots and say, I have issues with my envy. Can you give me paracetamol? The guy will look at me and say, are you okay? I can help you with your body. Okay. Why people are scared of death? Why? Sometimes it's because where their soul is at now is not where they want it to be. They know themselves that I'm easily someone who is affected by the whispers of Satan. I am someone who finds haram normal. I'm someone addicted to something sinful. So when they fear death, sometimes it's not the idea of leaving this world. It's the idea that the exam result their soul is on at the moment is low. Therefore, they think to themselves, what if God places me with similar souls in the hereafter? Imagine seeing your mirror, 1,000 of you, at the stage you're in. If you, at the moment, are a stage, your soul is a very polite soul, caring soul. How many times do you hear the phrase, caring soul? Why don't they say caring body? Why do they say caring soul? Why do they say caring soul? Why do you call someone who you love your soul mate? Why not body mate? It's because the characteristics you've developed, you found the mirror in yourself. Therefore, sometimes people were scared of death because where their soul was at, they knew this body is going to die and decay, but this soul is going to continue. Those who knew that they had performed what in Arabic language and Islamic thought we call tazkiyat an-nafs. Those who had reached the level of nafs mutma'inna. In the Quran, God talks of different stages that your soul can reach. You could have nafs al-lawama, which is the soul which is conscious of when it does bad, but tries to constantly approve or introspect. You have a soul which is constantly on the area of sinning, finding it normal to sin, and having no problem actually. Sinning and hurting people and ruining people's lives, very normal. No, it won't even lose sleep over it. Then you have a soul of those who have reached a level of itmi'nan, that they become what we call in English godly souls on earth. You've heard the phrase? Look at all the phrase that use soul. Soul mate, caring soul, godly soul. These are the people who have reached a level in their life, which is which level? Which is a level in their life where they are godly souls. The godly soul seeks to unite with the origin that breathed a spirit into me. That is the philosophy of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib's approach to death. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam literally embodies one phrase from the Quran. What is it? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. His embodiment of this world is that I belong to Allah and to Allah I will return. For him, death was never an issue. Why? If death is me crossing a bridge to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why am I scared of death? Sometimes I've been to certain janazas, certain funerals. I've seen the family cry around the person who's died. Then they tell me, do you know Sayyid Ammar, how much he loved Imam Ali alayhi salam? Do you know how much he loved Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? I'm like, so why are you crying? They're like, what do you mean? I said, why are you crying? He's going to be sitting with them right now. If a bridge to seeing Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam was me dying, how many of you would be scared of death? If someone said to you, you have to die for you to see Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, would you be willing to take that on or no? Think about death. Our philosophy of death is normally what? I'm scared, I don't want to die. Hold on a minute. If someone said to me that you've got to go through this stage for you to see Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, I think I'll take my chances to say the truth. Because I love Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, I've never even seen him. I love Imam Ali alayhi salam, and I go to the mosque on 19th of Ramadan, 20th of Ramadan, 21st of Ramadan. I've never seen him. And then someone says to me, do you know if you die, there's a chance that you will be sitting in their company? Would you be scared of death? Or would you think, hold on a minute, if you're telling me that if I pass away, there's a chance that I'm going to be in the company of the beloved? Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib doesn't just enjoy the company of his beloved. He can't wait to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through death. Because to him, there is this continuous spiritual growth where eventually those lights that were at the beginning of creation return to their wonderful station at the end of creation. Understand this delicate point. That Imam, we believe, he and Rasulullah's light was created thousands of years before Adam. For him, there is this full circle journey. Death is just one of the stages. No problem. We'll cross that stage. And that's why when you look at Nahjul Balagha, his philosophy of death is never negative. There have been certain thinkers, their philosophy of death is negative. Like when I look at, for example, Sartre, or I look at, who else can you look at? Camus, for example. And you look at others, maybe of the French philosophers, you'll see that they talk about existence, non-existence. They'll talk about suicide, anxiety. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, in contrast, doesn't look at death in a very negative manner. He looks at it more in a manner of reminding oneself that it's going to happen. So just make sure that you don't fall for this idea that you're going to live forever. Just make sure that you've packed enough for a journey, and that this journey is a continuation of a journey of growth. In Nahjul Balagha, what does he do? The first thing he does, which is so clear in Nahjul Balagha, is he makes it clear that, listen, death doesn't scare me at all. Death, rather, for me, is another stop on this flight that I'm taking. If you look in Sermon 5 of Nahjul Balagha, you'll see Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam has this unbelievable line that literally sends shivers down one's spine. He says, by Allah, the son of Abu Talib is more familiar with death than an infant with the breast of its mother. You look at the metaphor that he gives over here. The infant with the breast of its mother, how familiar that infant. Subhanallah, there are certain things which come naturally. You don't need to teach a baby about suckling. Innately, the baby yearns for suckling. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, in a way here, what's he saying? He's saying the reality is you don't need to teach me about death. Innately, I look for it. I can't wait for the day that it happens. I understand death as a spiritual union with the beloved and a part of the growth of myself. When you therefore look at that line, Imam, there's no wonder that Imam in his life, nothing scared him. If I was at Badr, listen, if I was part of an army of 300 and the opposition is 900, I'd be a bit scared. So what I'd do is I'd probably go and try and hide behind Imam Ali alayhi salam. Or if I'm at Uhud and I've got all these soldiers coming towards the mountain of Uhud, I'd be thinking, oh my Lord. I don't blame some people for running away, because that was inevitable death. Or if I see someone like Amr ibn Wud al-Amari at Khandaq, and I see him coming towards me and he's like, who of you is going to fight me? Literally, Amr ibn Wud at Khandaq, he said to them, he said, why are you guys all scared of death? At the end of the day, if you die, you're going to go to heaven. And if you stay alive, then you will get a reward. Again, only one man literally faced him with death. At Khaybar, it's the same. Have you ever seen Imam Ali alayhi salam ever fear or run away from death? The first thing that you see is this line in Nahjul Balagha. By Allah, the son of Abu Talib is more familiar with death than the infant is with the breast of his mother. So here you find Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam highlighting that, you know what, I'm not scared of death. For me, when I look at death, what is it? I look at death as simply a bridge that I have to cross. And that's why many of you would have heard of one of the greatest orators in the history of mankind was, of course, the orator known as Cicero. You may have come across Cicero, the great philosopher. People talk of Rome and they talk of Cicero. Cicero was one of the greatest orators you'll ever see. Literally, Cicero, when he would look at death, he said, what's the issue with death? What's death? Soul of mankind is returning to the eternal station. Why would you have an issue with it? If the soul is going to be returning to the eternal, why are you scared? Your soul continues to grow in a journey. What's interesting about someone like Martin Heidegger, the great philosopher Martin Heidegger, when he would look at death, he would say, listen, death is inevitable. We see it every single day. No one can say they've not seen death. Everyone's seen death. So even someone who doesn't believe in God and only believes in a materialistic worldview will say that my senses, my eyes have seen someone die. But Heidegger used to say something very interesting. He used to say, if you look at human beings, there's three features about them when it comes to death. Number one, we always like to talk about the death of others, not our death. You love to talk about, did you hear someone died? Did you hear that person passed away? Did you hear so-and-so passed away? But we don't talk about our own death. He said that was number one. He said number two, always know that there is no way you will ever escape from death. No way. Doesn't matter who you are, there's no way you'll escape from death. And number three, know that death could come to you at any moment. Would you agree these three features encompass every human being? We like to talk about others' death, but 5 minutes later, wallah, we don't talk about our own death and what will happen. But you'll talk about others. You heard so-and-so died, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, al-Fatiha. But no one in that gathering will say, bro, you know what? It could be our day soon. You know what? It could be me. It could be me tomorrow. Number two, what did he say? No way you'll escape death. Death is definitely going to come and affect each and every one of you. Number three, at any moment it could come. Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahjul Balagha has a similar philosophy. When people discuss Heidegger's concept of death, you'll see that Imam Ali alayhi salam has a similar philosophy when it comes to death. And that is, we'll talk about others' death, but we don't talk about our own death. Before he died, in Sermon 149 of Nahjul Balagha, or in some books, Sermon 148 of Nahjul Balagha, he talks about death blatantly. This is just before he passed away. Look in Sermon 148 of Nahjul Balagha. O people, everyone has to meet what he wishes to avoid by running away. Subhanallah. I'm telling you, we all wish to avoid it. We're all going to have to meet it one day. As much as you try and run away from it, and subhanallah, the way it can happen is the least expected. Sometimes you think it's going to happen when I'm 86, and then you hear of a best friend of yours who dies at 22. Sometimes, subhanallah, you think I'm going to pass away, for example, in an illness in a hospital bed, and then you hear of a good friend who a car hits one day and they fall. All of us, he says, oh people, everyone has to meet what he wishes to avoid by running away. Death is the place to which life is driving. Allahu Akbar. I don't care how many people describe death. This is one of my favorite lines. Death is the place to which life is driving. Imagine life is a car. Ultimately, what's life's last destination? On the stops. What will it be? The life is driving. Its last destination will be where? Its last destination will be death. To run away from it means to catch it. How many days did I spend in searching for the secret of this matter? He opens up. This is his last day before he passes away. This khutbah in Nahjul Balagha was the last sermon before he died. How many days did I spend in searching for the secret of this matter? But Allah did not allow save its concealment. Alas! It's the treasured knowledge. I want to ask you all a question. What does he mean when he says, how many days did I spend searching for this? He used to always tell the Prophet, when will I achieve Shahada? When will I be a martyr? When will I be a martyr? He used to always ask the Prophet, is it my day? Is it my day? Is it my day? There's an interesting question asked here theologically. He died having been struck in the mosque of Kufa on the 19th of Ramadan. He dies a couple of days later. Does he know the exact details of his death, or is he given some details of his death? This is an interesting theological question. Because I think when Imam Ali alayhi salam talks about death, if Mawla already knows where he's going to die, does it have the same impact? Have you ever asked yourself, when he walked towards his death, did he know Ibn Muljam that night, that mosque, in the exact position where he's going to die? Did he know or not? The first question that's raised here If he did, who told him? First question. Because this is a theological question concerning which issue? Ilm al-Ghayb. We agree? Knowledge of the unseen. Mawla alayhi salam, does he know that he is gonna die in the mosque of Kufa in the holy month of Ramadan in the 40th year after Hijrah at Fajr? If he does, number one, the first question, who's told him? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. That's why sometimes when people say to us, how do your imams have knowledge of the unseen? If my first imam is the student of a teacher who used to receive revelation from the heavens, then why wouldn't he have knowledge of events before they happen? When someone says to you, how could Imam al-Sadiq have knowledge of the unseen? Imam al-Sadiq got that knowledge from Imam al-Baqir, who got that knowledge from Imam Zayn al-Abidin, who got that knowledge from Imam al-Hussein, who got that knowledge from who? From Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, who got that knowledge from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, who got that knowledge from where? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing is, there's a debate in Shia theology. How much knowledge of their death are they given? There are a number of different opinions. One opinion is that they're given an outline of their death, not the exact details of their death. So one opinion was that, for example, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam knows from his grandfather that there will be a day that he will be a shaheed, and that the grandfather's ummah will be the ones who killed him, and that he will die thirsty. But the exact time, on the exact date, at the exact moment, may either be something he is privy to until the moment he dies, or may even be something that is removed from his knowledge, so the natural course of events happens on that day that he acts out naturally. When you look at Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Imam Ali on his way to death, having asked many times, when will I die? When will I die? Is it my time? Is it my time? That night, he begins to say, this could be the night. Do you notice? This is the night. This could be the night. He begins to leave the house. He begins to realize that this could be the one. But what's amazing about it is, if it's me and you, do you know what I would have done? I would have booked the first flight if I knew that I was dying in Kufa that night, and I would have gone out of there and I would have gone to Spain somewhere and not died. Because I do not want a man to come and strike me on my head in my sujood, if I even have a glimmer that that's what's going to happen. But the beauty about him is what? The beauty about him is, well, if this death is going to be a bridge for me to get to my beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and my beloved Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, and that the death means my soul continues to grow, and my basira and basar continues to see things in their reality, then this is part of the journey. Who said that death was going to be the end? The biggest trick Shaitan pulled, actually two he pulled. Number one, as we saw in the film The Usual Suspects, the first trick that he pulled was making you think that he doesn't exist. That's the biggest trick Shaitan pulled, making you think that he doesn't exist. The second trick Shaitan pulled was what? The second trick that Shaitan pulled was making us think that death would never happen to any of us, when the reality is it would come to us. So what did Mawla say? Listen to what he said. As for my last will, it is that concerning Allah. And then he begins with his final will. He begins talking about everything. He says, yesterday I was with you. Today I have become the object of a lesson for you. Yesterday Ali ibn Abi Talib was with us. 21st of Ramadan, when we all recited his masa'ib, what does he become? He becomes the object of a lesson for us. Your dad may have been with you yesterday. When your dad dies, what does he become for you? A lesson. When you go to the maqbara or the graveyard, why in Islamic architecture do we believe that the maqbara or the graveyard should be in the middle of town? Why not on the outskirts? You see, if I drive into London today, I don't see any graveyards on the way virtually. When I go into Oxford Street, I go to Bond Street, I go to Park Lane, I go to Hyde Park, I go to Edgware Road, I go the other side towards Knightsbridge, I head towards Fulham Road. Do you see any graveyards there? No. Where's the graveyards? Graveyards, for example, outskirts, let's say. Why does Islam say put the graveyards in the middle of town? so that every time you're driving to work, you realize, A, that life is so short, look how many have died before me. And that B, they have become lessons for me. Yesterday they were with me, today they are a lesson for me. Yesterday, what does he say? I was with you. Today I have become the object of a lesson for you. And tomorrow I shall leave you. Allah may forgive me. And then he says what? He begins to talk about, if the foot remains firm in the slippery place, well and good. But if the foot slips, this is because we are under the shades of branches, the passing winds, and the canopy of clouds, whose layers are dispersed in the sky and whose traces disappeared in the earth. I was your neighbor. Imam Ali is telling them, I was your neighbor. I was next to you yesterday in Kufa. You guys used to see me giving out food to the orphans. I was giving out food to the poor. I was your neighbor. My body kept you company for some days, and shortly you will find just an empty body of mine, which would be stationary after all its movements and silent after its speech, so that my calmness, the closing of my eyes, and the stillness of my limbs may provide you a lesson. Because it is more of a counsel for those who take a lesson from it than eloquent speech and a ready word. Subhanallah. Have you ever seen a dead body? Have you ever done ghusl of a dead body in your life? Everyone at home, I want to ask you, if you've not, go to your local mosque and try and learn how ghusl is done of a dead body in the Muslim community. Imam Ali says there are more lessons from looking at a dead body than there is from an eloquent speaker. I could give 1,000,000 lectures on death. Ali ibn Abi Talib says, looking at a dead body, there are more lessons for you than the eloquent speakers. Because when you're looking at a dead body, the reality is so frank in front of you and so real that this person was with me for years and now I'm looking at them, they're no longer there. Look at how life is so fickle that all of a sudden you can go. Imam Ali says what? After speech, my calmness, the closing of my eyes, the stillness of my limbs may provide you counsel, because this is more of a counsel for those who take a lesson from it than eloquent speech and a ready word. I am departing from you like one who is eager to meet someone. Allah. Who's he eager to meet? His Lord, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, Sayyid al-Shuhada Hamza, Ja'far al-Tayyar. He's eager to meet all of them. Why would I be scared if I'm going to meet my beloved? Why would I be scared? Why should I be scared? I might be scared for those who I leave behind. But I'm not going to be scared of death if I believe that my soul has reached a level of goodness, politeness, piety, respect, dignity. Then why would I be scared? He says, tomorrow you will look at my days. Then my inner side will be disclosed to you. And you will understand me after the vacation of my place and its occupation by someone else. Beautiful line. You people, you ended up killing me, yeah? You fought me at Jamal and Safir and Nahrawan. You don't like me, yeah? Just wait until I die. And then you'll see who'll take over Islam. And then you'll see what happens to the religion of Islam. So therefore, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, what does he do? Firstly, he makes it clear, don't run away from death. It's going to come to you. Take lessons from those who've died before you. Learn from what they did. Make them become a source of counsel for you. Second thing he does is that he reminds us of those who've died before us. Why don't you take heed of them? They achieved the most powerful status, yet they all died. So never think that you reach a level where death will not affect you because you're thinking you're something powerful. Wallah, there are people in the world, I'm telling you, because of their money, they think death will never touch them. There are. And there are people in human history. Go to Sermon 182 of Nahjul Balagha. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam does this wonderfully in this sermon, where in the sermon he begins to talk about those who have died before us. And the sermon, actually the section on it, is learning from past people. But there's this particular line which I wanted to focus on. Look what Imam Ali alayhi salam says. He says, if there was anyone who could secure a ladder to everlasting life or a way to avoid death, it would be Sulaiman ibn Dawood alayhi salam. Listen to this line again. If there was anyone who could secure a ladder to everlasting life, to live forever, or a way to avoid death, it was who? Sulaiman ibn Dawood alayhi salam. Why? Who was given control over the jinn and men, along with prophethood and a great position before Allah. But when he finished what was his due in food of this world and exhausted his fixed time, the bow of destruction shot him with the arrow of death. Is there anyone richer in history than Nabi Sulaiman? Nabi Sulaiman, is there anyone richer? Forget richer. Let's put wealth aside. People will say to me, Bill Gates is very rich. Warren Buffett is very rich. Jeff Bezos is very rich. They're all very rich. Let's put money aside. Do they have control over the jinn and the animal kingdom? Although I know some viewers might actually believe that they do in certain ways. But do they have control over the jinn and the animal kingdom? Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, he wanted to get the Queen of Sheba's throne. That's all he said. That's all he said. How powerful must you be when you're like, there's a throne of a queen somewhere, or she's got jewels. You know what? Who's going to bring it for me? How powerful must you be? I don't care how powerful you are, you still would need a bodyguard, security guard, an army, whatever. Sulaiman's just like, who's going to bring me the Queen of Sheba's throne? Anyone? So one of the jinn says, I'll bring it to you before you get up from your place. Yep. Because he used to work from morning until midday. Imagine you've got a jinn who's literally next to you. He's like, I'll get it for you. Just chill. I'll FedEx it in my own way. How powerful must you be? That a jinn just literally turns around to you. Not just the jinn turns around. Just normally jinns, when we think about this, you're scared jinn. Allahu Akbar jinn. Hold on. This jinn is telling Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, is like, yeah. Where is she again? Okay, yeah. I'll bring it to you before you get up. And then one of the humans turns around to him by the name of Asif bin Barkhi. He says to him, I'll bring it to you before you blink. It was there. What did the Quran say? I'll bring it to you before you blink. I want you to imagine how powerful you must be when someone blatantly says to you, you say to him, listen, I forgot my laptop in Australia. I was in Australia for lectures and I forgot my laptop. Can you get it for me? He's like, yeah, sure, said Ammar. Before you blink, it's in front of you. Habibi, I was going to blink in exactly 1.6 seconds. It was their laptop. How powerful must you be? Does this person die? Does this person die? This person can look at a hudhud. He can look at a bird and begin talking to it about where it was. So where were you, hudhud? What have you been doing? Hudhud said, I've seen a kingdom similar to yours. And it is run by someone called Sheba, Balqis. Even Balqis, how powerful she was. When she came to Sulaiman's palace, she lifted her dress as she walked into the palace because there was water. So she, as a queen, did not want her dress to get wet. She didn't realize that the finest glass was on top of this water. She could have just walked across it. And that was one of the reasons she converted to the path of Sulaiman, that if Sulaiman's palace can have glass on the water so fine that it deceived the eyes of Sheba, then how about the Lord who sent Sulaiman? Hudhud, where you been? I saw Sheba. I've got birds talking to me. I've got jinns communicate with me. I've got someone who can bring my laptop without me even blinking from about 85,000 million miles away. I've got all of that at my disposal, yeah? And all of that at my disposal. I can even talk to ants. How many of you, there's a surah in the Quran called the ant, isn't it true? Surah An-Naml. He can talk to ants. Isn't there a conversation in the Quran where he talks to the ants? If you've got all of that, could you ever defeat death? If a human today could talk to the jinn, could talk language of lions, giraffes, zebras, if a human can talk to any human in the world and get whatever they want within a split second, wallah, until today, the human has still not masterminded many of these things. But if we did mastermind it, wouldn't we be so arrogant that we'd be like, I can overpower death, death cannot affect me? Subhanallah, Imam Ali alayhi salam refers to Sulaiman. Why? Because Sulaiman alayhi salam, with all that power and all that kingdom and all those contacts and all those languages and all that knowledge, at the end what happens to him? at the end, even he passes away. So what does Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib say about him? Imam says that we must take a lesson from who? We must take a lesson from Sulaiman alayhi salam. That when some of us think, you know what, death's not going to affect me. Baba, if you're at a casino, I'm going to come to this point, this is vital. Make sure wherever you are, ask yourself one question. If I died here tonight, would Allah be pleased with me? Because wherever you are, you cannot escape it. It doesn't matter how much power you have. What did Imam Ali alayhi salam say about Nabi Sulaiman? Imam Ali said, Nabi Sulaiman, he was who? His houses became vacant when he died. His habitations became empty. Another group of people inherited them. SubhanAllah. I can have mansions and cars, and I can have jewelry and the finest watches. Another group will come and inherit them. I go to my grave. The only way I could defeat death is which way? Is by making sure that I am somebody who has left three things behind. Either I've left behind knowledge, or I've left behind righteous children, or I've left behind a sadaqah jariyah that continues to grow for me. Rasulullah said, when you die, all your actions die except three. These are the three that you'll leave behind to make sure that you defeat death. If you tick the boxes of these three, then you should be someone who's very confident about facing death. Why would you be scared of death? Face death confidently. But whatever you do, is make sure that the place that you pass away in is a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at you and say, why in your last moment did you disobey me? There is a letter in Nahjul Balagha. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's letter 69 of Nahjul Balagha. Letter 69, I think it's 69. 68 or 69, of course, depending on what version of Nahjul Balagha you have at home. Was it or not? Maybe it's not. Or maybe it is Hadith 69. It'll come back to me in a second. But it talks about this idea that make sure that your last moment on this earth is a moment in which you have lived a life which is respectable enough that that last moment isn't your death. There are many Muslims in the community, by the way, many who fast in Ramadan. They don't mind the odd drink after Ramadan. There are many Muslims who fast in Ramadan. They don't mind doing zina after Ramadan. There are some, even on Eid day, they go clubbing as a celebration for fasting in the holy month of Ramadan. What happens if the angel of death came and took your soul in a club? Or the angel of death came and took your soul while you're sipping on the champagne on a particular airline on your way somewhere? Or the angel of death took your soul while you're being rude to your parents? What happens at that moment? That could literally be the worst situation for anyone. Therefore, make sure that when you pass away in a way where your final moments are the best moments, and not a final moment where you let yourself down. Imam constantly in Nahjul Balagha, he tries to focus on this. He tries to tell them that you must make sure that your final moments are not final moments where you're disgraced. Because if those final moments are final moments which are disgraced, then what do you face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say? Imagine you die in a club. What do you tell God on that day? What do you turn around and say? God, you know what? I swear coming home from the club I was going to pray Fajr. Oh God, I swear my friends, they're the ones who took me to this place. Oh God, I swear that I was going to change when I grow older. Because there are many who say that, listen, when I grow older, I'll stop these things. But I'm still young. How do you know you're going to grow older? Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib is saying, take lessons from those around you. If Sulaiman could not escape death, you're not going to escape death. And if you've seen younger people who pass away, then don't be in that situation where you do what? Where you think that you're going to defeat death. Eventually death is going to come onto you. And that's why you'll see Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib in another sermon 108 or 109 of Nahjul Balagha, again depending on the version that you have, again opens up of death. And always when he opens up in a way which is quite emotional. So if you all go, for example, to sermon 108, 109 of Nahjul Balagha, you'll see again Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib opens up. And he talks about, listen to what he says on death. Whatever they were ignoring has befallen them. Separation from this world, from which they took themselves safe, has come to them. And they have then reached that in the next world, which they had been promised. Whatever has befallen them cannot be described. Listen to what he says. The pangs of death and grief for losing this world have surrounded them. Consequently, their limbs have become languid and their complexion changes. Then death increases its struggle over them. The way Imam Ali talks about your final moments on this earth. In someone, it stands in between him and his power of speaking. Although he lies amongst his people, looking with eyes, hearing with ears, with full wits and intelligence. May Allah never show us this. Imagine you're sitting there. Have you seen people who are dying? Some of them, they're dying, but they're not speaking. Everyone around them, they can see them. I can see you. I can see you. I can see all of you. But subhanAllah, death is beginning to overtake me. I can't speak anymore. In someone, it stands in between him and his power of speaking. Although he lies amongst his people, looking with eyes, hearing with ears, with full wits and intelligence, he then thinks over how he wasted his life and in what activities he passed his time. He recalls the wealth he collected when he had blinded himself in seeking it and acquired it from fair and foul sources. Now the consequences of collecting it have overtaken him. Can you imagine you're dying and Imam Ali is saying that people around you are talking, you want to say something, you can't because your power of speech is now gone, and you just begin to think to your head, inside your head you're thinking, what a waste of a life. What have I done? It's over. It's finished. I'm trying to speak, but clearly no one can hear me. They're all talking to each other. If they could hear me, they'll all look at me. Can't any of you hear me? Is there no one who can hear me? I'm here. I'm here. I earn in halal, but I also earn in haram. And I can't believe this moment. It's coming. It's all there. Now the consequences of collecting it have overtaken him. He gets ready to leave it. It would remain for those who are behind him. They would enjoy it and benefit by it. There's something unique about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Any description he gives you of anything, it's like he's been there. Normally people say about death, there are some philosophers who used to say there's no point you discussing death because you've not experienced it. Ali ibn Abi Talib, existence, it's as if he was there. Creation, it's as if he was there. Any instance, Prophet's lives, it's as if he was there. Even though he wasn't there, but the way he describes it, it's as if he was literally. Can I describe to you the feeling that can I describe it to you? I haven't described it because I ain't been there. Normally when someone tells me how's death, I'll say, bro, I haven't been there. I can't describe. Ali ibn Abi Talib describes it like he was there. He gets ready to leave it. It would remain for those who are behind him. They would enjoy and benefit from it. It would be an easy acquisition for others, but a burden on his back, and the man can now not get rid of it. He would thereupon bite his hands with teeth out of shame for what was disclosed to him about his affairs at the time of death. He would dislike what he coveted during the days of his life, and would wish that he who envied him on account of it and felt jealous over him for it should have amassed it instead of himself. Allahu Akbar. I wish those who were jealous for what I had, now that death is real, I wish those who are jealous of what I have, I wish they could have it. Even I, about my lecturing, I sometimes say, I wish those who are jealous about my position, I wish they could have it, and I could go back to being somebody nobody knows. The reality is, when death comes upon us, I wish others could have what I have, because what I have more tests and more responsibility than someone who doesn't have what I have. Death would go on affecting his body till his ears too would behave like his tongue, and they start losing the functioning. At the beginning, what did we say? When death comes upon you, what goes first? Speaking. Can no one hear me? Can no one hear me? I can hear all of you, but why can none of you hear me? Can none of you hear me? I'm trying to say hello here. I'm alive. What's wrong with all of you? And everyone around him, what are they saying? Wallah, he was a nice man. I wish we could have one more conversation with him. And you are actually listening. Then Imam Ali says, the next thing that goes is you're listening. He would lie amongst his people, neither speaking with his tongue or hearing with his ears. He would be rotating his glance over their faces, watching the movements of their tongues, but not hearing their speaking. Then death would increase its sway over him, and his sight would be taken by death, as the ears had been taken, and the spirit would depart from his body. he would then become a carcass amongst his own people. They would feel loneliness from him and get away from near him. He would not join a mourner or respond to a caller. Then they would carry him to a small place in the ground and deliver him into it to face his deeds. They abandoned sometimes even visiting him. In one sermon in Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib describes death better than any philosopher before him or after him. If ever you want to know how one's final moments are, then read that particular sermon. 1 minute, you're the talk of the town. The next minute, you can't even talk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Imam Hussein Charity is giving you the chance to provide food baskets for destitute and impoverished families all over Iraq and Afghanistan. So let's see what your donation gets, Ali. We have oil, tomato paste, we have tahini, lentils, sugar, tea, pasta, tuna cans, salt, dates, rice. She would also be receiving fruit, vegetable and meats, and that comes fresh on the day delivery and only costs £30. Brothers and sisters, you can pay via bank transfer, PayPal, or you can visit www.imamhusseincharity.com.
Your donation can make a world of difference in the life of a hungry child.
As lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, we all have an inclination to the epitome of love. When we rejoice, when times are hard, whatever stage of life we are in, we all yearn to be in one special place. We all wish to visit the blessed shrine of Imam al-Hussein in the holy city of Karbala. Not all of us have the blessing to visit the shrine of Imam Hussein, but there is still a way to experience the sights and sound of the blessed land of Karbala in the comfort of your own homes.
We call upon you, dear viewers, to support us in our financial costs to help bring the Holy Land of Karbala beaming into your homes. You can support us with a monthly donation of just $50 or £30. We are your gateway to Karbala. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Imam Hussein TV3.